interesting object. You can see that we've got a test property. So what does test do? It's a regular expression, and basically what it amounts to is it will test a file to see if it matches this regular expression, and if it does, so in other words, if it has an extension of .js, it will use the Babel loader on it. Okay, and it will. You can even tell it to exclude certain things, like perhaps the /node modules, because we don't want it to. Yeah, we don't want it to load up to combine every single possible module. And the other cool thing is that we can pass in a couple of stuff to the Babel loader, including an array of the presets that we wanted the Babel loader to use. So ES 2015 and React. So that's for the JavaScript loader. Okay, so what that will do is inside app.js, anything that's required, anything that's used, will be bundled together into a bundle.js using this loader. And now the HTML file, this entry point, will also be loaded up, but in this case, we're using the file loader. So all that does is just outputs a proper, just basically outputs the file. We've also got this CSS loader. So any CSS file, it'll actually run it through style loader and CSS loader. Now, this is an interesting loader because what this allows us to do is it actually allows us to bundle the CSS directly in the bundle.js file. So your CSS actually sits inside the JavaScript file, which is really a really interesting concept because it basically lets you require the CSS file that you need straight from inside your app. Okay, and then the Webpack loader will basically inject it directly into your HTML file on the output, which is really interesting. And it's the same thing with the PNG, so the URL loader. But here, we know that PNGs, we can actually embed them into the HTML file as sort of data URLs.
Right.
That's something that's really cool. So what the URL loader does is that basically if the file is under this limit, it will embed it directly into your JavaScript and into your your bundled output. Now we won't do the same thing for the JPEGs because you can't quite set them up that way. So instead we'll use the file loader here. So that's essentially what our Webpack configuration does. Now if I go back into my command line, I can actually run Webpack. Okay, and what it will do is it will just use the config file to output everything. So I'll just show you what that looks like in a second. So there we go. So you can see that it outputted an index.html and the bundles.js. So if I actually go back into Visual Studio Code, I can see my dist folder is now here. This is what the bundle.js file looks like. It's pretty much every single piece of our app, including this. This is our app stuff right here. And you can see that it's using the Webpack require, which is pretty interesting. And there's even our compiled JSX.
So that's what JSX looks like when it's compiled, a bunch of create element classes.
Exactly.
Or create element methods.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, we're not optimizing our Webpack loader. So you can actually basically chain loaders, as we've done here with the style and the CSS loader. You can do the same thing for other JavaScript so that you can do that. Or you can add plugins as well to basically optimize your code. We're not doing that right now, which is it's all right. But what I did want to show you actually now is how the CSS loader has an impact on the code that you use. So you'll notice in our index.html, I've actually removed the app.css style script right here.
Okay.
Right. But instead, what I do is to actually use this app.css, I actually go into my app.js and just simply require the app.css.
Okay.
So when I do that, it'll actually inject it directly into our JavaScript.
In this case, that word require is kind of speaking to Webpack. Webpack is the one that handles that require?
Exactly. Okay. So Webpack basically changes what the require does. And it makes it so that you can do a whole bunch of different stuff. So I'm back on the website here. I do want to show you Webpack, the style loader, just to give you an idea of the things that you can do. So it's the style loader module. So you can see here that when you require things, you can actually tell it to
bump that text up. Yeah, there we go.
You can actually tell it to do a whole bunch of things. So here it'll actually add CSS to the DOM by injecting a style tag. So you can see that your require you can do a bunch of stuff to get that require. You can even choose what loaders you use directly in the require. So here we can say style and then do the CSS loader and then pass in this file.css.
Okay, so you've heard that it's good form to break your CSS out into separate style sheets and not embed them in the HTML file, or certainly not to put them in inline in your elements. But all of those best practices go out the door in the subject of bundling, right? Because when you're bundling, you're not caring about good form because developers aren't looking at the results of a bundle. You're caring about performance and saving bytes and optimizing that end user's experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it also makes sense with the React ecosystem, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create these very independent, reusable components, right? So it almost makes sense for you to embed the styles directly in the components.
Yeah.
Now that being said, if you're on if you believe in the other side where you need to split out your CSS away, there's actually a bunch of Webpack plugins that basically will let you do the same loading, but it will in the end output a CSS file.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
yeah, so you can do it the other way.
Now, when I put this CSS into my individual components, do I still have to worry about my CSS rules creeping out of my component and affecting other ones? Like
well, right now what we're doing here is we're just requiring the app.css file itself, right? You still need to set the class names for inside each of your component and stuff like that. In our example, that's already handled for us because we've already scoped all of our CSS.
Yeah, right. Great. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's it for Webpack, unless there's anything else that you want to add.
Yeah, I did want to show you how we loaded the images up.
Oh, yeah, right.
So this is something that was added right here. So if you take a look at our pizza bot, we have these really cool, fancy images right here. So how do I actually do that inside the JavaScript? But actually, before I jump into that, I do want to show you what they look like. So if I go into my DOM Explorer, so I did want to show you one last thing before we head off, and that's the effect of the image loader. So if I actually select this image, I just want to show you something right here. You'll notice that because this is a PNG file and it's fairly small, it's actually embedded the entire thing as the data URL right here.
I love those. I don't know why I love data URLs. I think that's amazing that the image is actually there in the HTML.
Yeah, so the way that we do that is if you actually take a look at sort of our store pane, you see that magical require here? We're requiring the PNG file, and then Webpack is actually doing the translation to, oh, well, you really mean like you want the data URL or the link to the PNG. And that's something that's really powerful with Webpack. We have a very simple Webpack script here, but you can clearly make this a lot more complex with a bunch of plugins to optimize things and improve the performance. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to show for the Webpack script. Oh, there's one more thing actually. I mentioned this Webpack dev server. So if you take a look at the package.json, you'll notice that I have a script here that I've been running throughout the day, the npm run start Webpack server, and that's what that's going to do is going to start the Webpack dev server and pass in a couple of things, including the hot, the inline, the colors, and the progress flags. And what the hot one will do is it will hot reload a bunch of that stuff along with the inline. So that pretty much covers it for Webpack.
And that pretty much covers it for Module 5. So thanks for sticking with us. And join us for the next one, Module 6, where we talk all about the bot technology that's behind this demo application.
Awesome.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're still talking about React.js, and this is the beginning of Module 6. On this one, we're going to be focusing on the bot framework and how we use this new framework in this sample application, and we consume the bot's conversations and the data that we create with the bot. We consume that in our React application. What it's really going to do is give us a means to show how to consume things from a REST API, which is an extremely common scenario. You're very likely going to be doing this. So let's have a look at where we are in the agenda. We are on Module 6. This is all about connecting the pizza bot. That's a typo there. Connecting the pizza bot app with the back end. But first, before we just dive into the content, who's Lisa?
Lisa is an awesome member of our team up in Canada. She's an intern at Microsoft Canada. She's in her 4th year at UBC. And we just got to give her a big shout out because she actually wrote a lot of the code for the bot backend and she showed us how to set up our own Lewis models and basically write the little dialogue that the bot framework actually does. So a big shout out to Lisa. Thank you so much for your help, and you can actually follow her at Lisa Miss Bear. Miss Lisa Bear.
There you go.
On Twitter.
All right. So first, what's a bot?
So what is a bot? You're right. Like it's an interesting question. Like, what is a bot? I guess the simplest way to explain what a bot is, it's like a thing that you chat with. I guess it's like a droid. It's like a little robot, right? I mean, bot comes from the word robot. So this robot just basically takes any instructions that you give it, right? So bots in the recent sort of conversation around bots, it's always been around chat bots specifically. So this whole idea of you basically talk to a bot, okay, or a chat bot, a bot, and then it's able to take some order or something from you. And it's mostly a lot of startups are working around this right now. Mostly around conversational commerce, this ability to just talk to something and get something like an order or like a product or something like a car ride or something straight from just chatting with a bot using one of the many popular messaging frameworks. So what Microsoft has done, this was announced at Build. So this is all really, really new, brand new, hot stuff that we're working with right now. So you're getting a sneak peek, not a sneak peek, but like you're getting a peek into how the Microsoft bot framework works. So what Microsoft has done is we released this framework that lets you connect a bot that you have written, something that is able to converse with someone else, with all of the different messaging platforms that are out there and that are open. So that a bot is essentially, to answer your question, it's something that lets you converse with a machine.
Great. And that's one of the core premises of our app here, is that we want to be able to take people's orders by letting them just chat with this bot. So let's go ahead and connect with the bot framework. How do we do that?
Right. So the first thing you're going to want to do is actually go to dev.botframework.com. I've signed in here, so you can see my screen here. And you can see that I already have a bot up here. It's called the Rami Pizza bot. But just to show you what you can do here and how powerful this bot framework is, you can write your bot and it can connect with a bunch of different services. So to give you an example, I just want to go to my documentation right here. Your bot can connect with a whole bunch of channels. So you write a bot, it's basically a web service, okay? And it works with the bot connector to sort of get the messages, route messages, register the bot, get the user's information and all that stuff. And it will work with all these different channels, including text messages, email, Skype, Facebook Messenger, Slack, GroupMe, Telegram, or just a straight up web chat. So in our example, we're gonna use the web chat component so that you can actually chat with the bot directly from a website. But in theory, we could easily connect this bot to chat via Skype or Facebook Messenger. Yeah, which is pretty awesome. So now that we've sort of talked about the bot framework, you can sort of read the documentation. You can see that you can build sort of dialogues with the Bot Builder SDK and connect your bot with the bot connector. Okay. What I had to do was actually I had to register a bot. Okay. So to do that, you just press register bot. That basically tells the bot framework where it's going to go to get and send, like to send and receive the messages. Okay. All right. So we're going to get back to this, but basically our bot backend, this web service, is going to be hosted up on Azure. So in our current bot, we actually have the endpoint set to react.mva.azurewebsites.net/API/messages. All right. The channel that I have enabled as well is the web chat channel, so that you're able to actually chat via a web interface with this bot. So let me actually show you what that web interface looks like real quickly here. I can actually just go to the React MVA Azure websites and then chat, and it will pop up this pizza bot chat window. So I won't actually chat with it right away because I do want to show you the work that we have to do to make this chat bot work first. And to do that, I'm going to switch to this other service that Microsoft released that's part of cognitive services called LUIS. So LUIS stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service. Okay. It's a beta product right now, but you can definitely sign up for the beta and try it out. And basically what LUIS lets you do is it lets you train a model to basically understand a sentence and get an intent associated with that sentence, and then be able to pull out entities from whatever you're saying to this, you're passing into Lewis. So to give you an example, we have a pizza bot AI that we've created, this model, and what we've done is I've added a couple of intents, like perhaps you might have a greeting, right? You might say hi bot or hello, and then you have an order pizza intent, right? So when I say, can I get this order in, you'll be able to get that. It'll be able to recognize that this is trying to get an order from a pizza, right? So to see what happens, you can actually type in a new utterance to see like what the example is. So like what it thinks it's going to do. So let me just zoom in here because it is a little small. There we go. Better. So let's say that I wanted to, can I have a small cheese pizza? If I type this in, okay, it'll actually run all this stuff through it, and it'll recognize this is an order pizza.
Okay. With
a confidence of 1. Basically, it actually is 100% sure that I'm trying to order pizza when I write that in. But the other cool thing that it does is you can also train it to recognize certain entities in your sentence. So here I've got it trained to recognize small is actually the size of the pizza.
Okay.
Cheese is the toppings. But I even have it set up to recognize my name as well. So this is correct. And by pressing submit, I'm basically training the Lewis bot to actually know what this does. But if I went ahead and actually went, my name is Rami and I want a small cheese pizza, it should recognize that my name is Rami, name, small is the size, cheese is the pizza, and that this is an order pizza.
So there are a lot of combinations of words that Lewis will map to this one intent, which is that I'm ordering.
Yes.
So I might say, I would like to order, I want to order, I want a cheese pizza. I might say all these different things. Do I have to train it with all of those phrases? Does a phrase have to have been said at least once in order for Lewis to map it to the correct intent?
Actually, no. Lewis is building a model based off of, I believe it's some type of machine learning, and it's able to actually guess that, hey, this is actually what I want to put in.
Okay.
Obviously, the more data you give Lewis, and the more data where you tell it what you mean, the better the model becomes, the better the machine learning becomes. But no, you don't need to actually give it the exact same sentence for it to recognize these things.
Great.
That's the power behind machine learning, is that based off some data, it's sort of able to predict, well, this is what this data means, right?
And this is a high-level service that's really wrapping Azure's machine learning service. So if you get into machine learning, you can do all of this yourself. Yeah. But it's on the hard side. And, and something like Lewis is a very common case, and you can do it all very easily. Yeah.
It basically sits on top of Azure Machine Learning. It's sort of part of that cognitive services suite. And the really powerful thing here that you need to know is that once you've got your model trained, okay, like let's say I train it again, I can actually go up to the top here and press publish. And what that's going to do is give me a URL that I could then just send messages to, and it will return a JSON object that pulls out the same stuff that it did in my new utterances.
It tells you the entities.
Exactly. So it'll tell you the entities, whether this is an order pizza and how confident it's an order pizza, or if it's a greeting, or if it's none of these things. So it's able to actually do that straight from the HTTP service. So when we actually start working with the backend, we're not going to go back anymore to this interface. We're not going to Lewis AI anymore. We're just going to use.
It's like the model's been created. We just use it, and we use the results of it. If we want to go train it some more, we can always do that. So then the responsibility of the bot is to facilitate the communication. And the responsibility of Lewis is to pull the intent and the entities out of.
To understand what the user is saying.
Great.
So once Lewis understands what the user is saying, the bot can make a decision. Okay, well, maybe this is my follow-on question. Maybe there's something else. And actually, that's what we'll work on next. There is one thing I did have to mention is that all of these require different keys. All right, so you can see here, these are actually my IDs and my keys. So
we'll just wipe those out after the show.
They'll be wiped out of the show. But basically, you will have to keep a track of these keys in your own app, and you'll be able to actually pass that in as like an app setting to your Azure web app, and be able to deploy the backend to the Azure web app.
And just make sure you don't do any big training broadcasts and show your keys on the screen.
Exactly. See, I don't even have a choice to hide my key in Lewis. That literally just shows it on the screen. So we're going to be using the bot framework, Lewis, and then we're also going to be using Azure to deploy our web service. The other thing that you need to remember is that the bot framework needs to have an endpoint that's publicly available, so we can't use localhost unless you use the bot emulator. That's possible,
Okay.
but we won't demo that today. We're just going to quickly push things.
So let me make this clear. Now, these things that we just showed you are happening in the cloud.
Yep.
And you need to have something that's publicly available. So you need to create. We're gonna create a node service, and our service that we create, we're gonna push into Azure, and then we're gonna allow the bot framework to talk to that node service.
Yep.
And then that node service is what our app is going to talk about. So in the next video, you're going to learn all about the node service, how and why we create it, and how it communicates with the bot framework and with Lewis.
Yep.
So, awesome. All right, welcome back. We're still in Module 6 talking about the bot component of this application. We looked at the bot framework, and that's running in the cloud, and Lewis that gives it the intelligence in the natural language, basically. And now we're going to be looking at a web service that's running in Node that we created, that we push into Azure so that it's got a public endpoint, and the bot framework can communicate with it. And then we're going to talk to that. So why don't you walk us through creating that Node.js site and pushing it up?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to dive right into the end folder of the 6 module. So if you go into your React MVA, we're at React MVA 06 bots code end. So taking a look at this code right here, there's actually a new folder that shows up here, and it's called the pizza bot folder. And inside you'll find 2 files. You'll find an index.html file, and we'll get to that in a second, but the most important file is the server.js. So opening that folder up, you'll see that we are basically requiring the builder, the bot builder. And what we'll do is we'll actually pass in where our model is, sort of the endpoint where it is, and we'll include our Lewis ID and Lewis subscription key. And right in there, we'll actually go to create a new builder that uses the Lewis dialog, and then we pass in where that model is, the URL for that model. Once that's created, that dialog is created, we connect to the bot connector bot. Yeah, it's 2 bot words in the same bot word. So we create a new builder using the bot connector bot. We pass in our secrets and our IDs, and then we tell it that, hey, at this URL, the /URL, this is the dialog that we care about. So it's going to use the Lewis dialog model to actually create this dialog for us. Now, if you remember in our Lewis model, we had a couple of intents. We had a greeting and then like a order pizza intent. Right. So anytime that the Lewis bot, this Lewis dialog recognizes one of these intents, okay, from a sentence that the user wrote, it'll actually create this event. And this is what we're actually going to be triggering down here. So we're going to listen to the greeting intent and the order pizza intent. Anytime that those intents are recognized, and an event will get thrown, and it'll execute this callback. So the nice thing about this dialog builder is that you can pass in an array of different functions so that as you're conversing with the user, it just sort of moves from one function to the next. All right. So for our greeting, we've just got a very simple thing. It's triggered anytime the user says hi or hello, and all it sends back as a session is basically asking the user, hi, what is your name, and can I take your order? Now, when the user says hi and he gets this response back, your typical response is to give your name and give your order in.
Yeah.
And that's what triggers the order pizza intent. All right. So inside the order pizza, what we're going to do is we're going to start creating this conversations object, so to keep track of the conversation that we've had with our user, so we can add that to our data. So we're going to start storing things, and we're going to use the session dialog data to store all this information as we move from one function to the next. And then in our first trigger, we're actually going to use the entity recognizer to find all the entities. And the ones that we're going to care about are name, size, and toppings, because these are the ones that we're training for.
Okay.
All right, so once we get the name entity, we're just going to reduce it into a single string and attach that as the human name to the dialog data. We're going to do the same thing for the entity size, and then we're going to do the same thing for the toppings, but in the toppings, we're going to keep it as an array. So we're going to map any toppings that it recognizes as an array, and we're going to add that to our dialog data. we're going to create the pizzas in the order, and then call next to move on to the next part of the session. So the next part, what we're going to do is we're going to save the order request that the user made by adding in whatever the text was, and then we're going to prompt the user in our next piece of the dialogue. We're going to prompt the user to ask him where does he want his pizza delivered. So if we get to this point, it means that the user has correctly entered in something that basically tells us, hey, he wants to order this type of pizza with this type of topping, and this is his name.
Okay.
All right. So we'll show you what that looks like.
We know enough. It's time to get his address.
Yeah, we time to get his address, exactly. We store the address. We push in the conversation to say, hey, this is what the human said his address was. And then we finally get to the end of our little flow right here. And what we're doing here is we're just basically trying to find out if humans already has this person who's making an order. If so, if he doesn't have that order, we'll then add in this empty object that has conversation orders. And then if it does exist, you can just add in, sort of like extend the conversations array with the new array of the new conversation that just took place, and add in the orders as well to the human names orders. And then call next on that, and then we end the dialogue with thank you for your order. So the end result of this is actually pretty neat. So if I go back to my chat application, and I'll show you how we got to this page in a second. Let me just show you the dialogue here. So the first thing I'm going to do is say hi. It's going to take a few seconds because the bot framework is going to go to our Azure website and actually figure out, okay, what is the thing, to go through the dialogue that we just described.
Okay.
So here the bot comes back, hi, what is your name and can I take your order? So you recognize that from the code that we just saw earlier. So I'm going to say my name is Rami and I want a small cheese pizza. Now it should be able to pick up the name, and this is an order pizza intent, right? I clearly want a small cheese pizza. So it does, and it actually goes to the next step and says, where would you like delivered? Well, how about 1237 Sesame Street? And it recognizes the order and says, thank you for your order, and it ends the dialogue. So now, in theory, if I go back to my server, I'm going to show you what I've also written here. So in my server.js, I also have an Express app, and basically what this Express app does is it says, hey, anytime that someone calls API/humans, I'm just going to return this humans object that I've been using to sort of store the data. Now, in theory, in practice, you probably want to actually have a real database here.
Yeah.
So you probably want to do a query or a post or something. I'm just using stuff that's in memory. So right now, if you call API/humans, it'll actually return that as a JSON. So if I go back here and I go to my React MVA and I go API/humans, it returns my nicely formatted JSON.
Yeah.
Rami was the person who just correctly picked up Rami as the name, and it's properly trimmed and capitalized, and that's because I added a couple of functions to do that. I see the conversations, so who bought text, hi, what is your name, can I take your order, the time this took place, and pretty much the rest of this
JSON data. I want to see that it got the pizza toppings correctly.
So we will move this down.
You got a scroll bar on the bottom.
Oh, there is, you're right. So the toppings would be under the order. And I might have multiple orders here. So here we are. Order status confirmed: pizza, small, toppings, cheese.
Oh, interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, it has pulled that out.
Awesome. So once we've got that set up, we're going to go back to our server.js. I just want to show the rest of this stuff. This is a clear function that just basically empties the data. How does the bot communicate with this? The bot framework. How does it communicate with this? We gave it the endpoint /API/messages, and what we do is in our app.post with Express, we just pass in the first verify that this is the right bot framework, and second listen anything the bot framework does. So that's how actually we've connected this Express app and all of this code with the bot framework.
Okay.
Right, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to serve this on the /chat, this static directory, and in this case, it's the current directory, so the pizza bot directory, and that's where you get the index.html that basically takes the web chat template as an iframe, and if you want to get that web chat template, you got to go back to the pizza, your bot framework, and if you go into My Bots, you can actually get the embed code by just pressing the edit here. So you're able to actually add that in, and it will produce this chat box as an iframe. So that's how we're getting this chat box, by serving the /chat from a static directory. And the other thing that we're doing here is we're also serving the React app itself at the root URL by serving the dist repo.
Great. So we're using this one web application for a few different things. One, I want you to be the bot framework.
Yeah.
And two, I want you to give me a UI for chatting with the bot. That's kind of already written for us. We just use the iframe, and then it's also serving our client app.
Exactly. So now if I want to take a look at what I've done here, I can see that I have my app here. It's returning some data. And if I go back into my pizza chain bot manager, I've actually created a fetch data function that basically gets the conversations that are in the API, and it's able to list them up here. So you can see that I've done several conversations with this one bot, and that it was correctly putting them all under the same conversation. So you can see here, this is our earlier conversation from earlier in the first module. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it for the pizza ordering bot and how to connect it with the bot framework and Lewis and all that stuff. It's fairly straightforward in the sense that, like, once you understand how the dialogues work and how the intents works, it's just really up to you to build basically the code that you want to, and how sort of the dialogue that you want to take place with the user.
Now, some people don't know that Azure is so good at running open source code.
Yeah.
And what we're actually doing here is real quickly and easily pushing
That's right.
a Node website into Azure. It loves Node and runs it really well, and there's a variety of ways that you can push it. You can, if you're using a tool like Visual Studio, you can do an official publish, which has some advantages. I mean, it's nice and easy and everything, but you can also use what I like to do, and that is you can create and manage your websites from the command line using the Azure-CLI NPM tool. And then you can also just wire your Azure website up to GitHub or push directly from a Git repository locally. Those are all ways to get this application, once you've created it locally, up into your Azure subscription.
So that's actually what I've done. And if you take a look at the package.json and you go into the scripts here, Azure will read this start script, and it will start the proper server.js, even if it's in a separate folder. So I've even set the main thing right here. So Azure will know what to do. The minute all I need to do is just I like to use Git to push to Azure website. So I would just create an Azure website and then do a Git push, and that's all you need to do. It's already pre-configured.
So do you check your dist folder into your GitHub?
Yes. So in this case, to simplify the deployment so that I don't have to run Webpack on Azure, I actually commit the dist from the Webpack build. But you can build it any way you like. It depends on how you want to do your continuous deployment scheme and how you want to do that.
You can also create a post-install script in the package.json. And then after the npm install, Azure will automatically call that script, which would,
run perhaps the Webpack compilation process.
Wonderful. So that's it for our server side. Now we're going to, in the next video rather, we're going to talk about how we consume this, bring this REST data down into our applications.
Yeah,
Stick
that's
around
right.
for that.